Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi Live Coding. In this episode, we're gonna touch on Blender Armature, and I think I talked about this a while ago using animation nodes, and I think I haven't tried using Sverchok to kind of dig down to Blender Armature and bone stuff. It is kind of interesting. Currently, we don't actually have nodes that's dealing with Armature yet, not like a grease pencil one. Pencil one is kind of interesting because we can kind of draw something using grease pencil and then kind of interpolate it and resample it, and then we actually can draw back grease pencil strokes using Sverchok. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I will actually draw something using grease pencil. So I'm just gonna draw this S on the floor, and I'm gonna use Sverchok to source it. So object ID selector should be able to source the grease pencil. I did this a couple of times already. And so it's gonna select the active frame and gonna pass the points out. By default, we get this a lot of points. Of course, I always do this, vector interpolations and range float, count 0 to 1, count to whatever value we want. This is gonna represent our kind of like joints. For joints like kind of spline, we want to keep them kind of arranged as equally as possible, as evenly as possible. We're not gonna use IK spline yet. IK spline and hook, that's another topic, but this time I'm just gonna use Sverchok to drive all the bones rotation and so on. So first of all, we're gonna build the joint. So this is gonna be draw the bone. Imagine this is like a tail of a monkey, for example. This is Sverchok bone exploration. So this is my kind of idea how we can approach this. So we have grease pencil and we can resample the grease pencil, and we have this something to work on for the bones. And my quick trick here is to use UV connection and just output the edges. This is actually the quickest way we can generate bones very easily. So I'll just make it like 18 bones. Doesn't matter, the number of bones doesn't matter here. Just try it as many as you want. You can have 100 bones, no problem, because we're just gonna wiggle the bones randomly. So 18 bones, and we generate the edges. We don't need to slice it. So we're gonna bake it. Okay, once I bake it, it's become just a polygon edge. Polygon edge is something that you can work on using skin modifier in Blender. And skin modifier is gonna turn it into a surface. And on top of that, you also have this create armature. So that's kind of workflow. If I hit the create armature, this guy is gonna generate bones. Or suddenly, so from grease pencil, you kind of have like a semi-procedural, even though they're not totally connected because we kind of bake it. It's okay. That's like a one step. At least we can always go back and re-bake it if you want. So the next thing we want to do is to animate the bone. So animating the bones, like I said, since we don't have a way to generate bones yet from Sverchok, so that's why I kind of draw it using grease pencil and then kind of convert it into polygon edge, and then I turn it into bones. So with Blender Armature, we actually have two modes, like you already know. There's edit mode for the bones, and there's the pose mode. With edit mode, of course, this is like the default position of the bones. You can move the bones by the head or by the tail, kind of reposition. Like you can think of them like the default position of the bones. I'm not gonna play around with the default position. I'm just gonna leave it. But we're gonna deal with the pose mode. With the pose mode, you basically can rotate the bones. I think it's rotating in the from the root there. So for every root, it's kind of rotatable. And by default, the rotation of the bone is actually quaternion. We want to turn it into XYZ just for simplicity. You can also use axis angle. So let's do that using Sverchok. This is gonna be the tricky part, but just let's have a look how we deal with this. Object ID selector, and we're gonna specify the armature. This is the armature, and let's check it out. bpy.data objects armature. So we are slowly start to dig inside the data block of the bones. So we have multiple bones, so we want to rotate them procedurally. So this can be tricky, but it's actually not too bad. So we're gonna dig using object ID set. Simply plug this data into this guy, and first of all, we want to change quaternion to XYZ or whatever using Sverchok. You can do this using Python, of course. It's probably easier, but I'm gonna use Sverchok for this. I'm gonna use the nodes. So if I'm switching to XYZ, you see here, bpy.context object pose bones blah 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 rotation mode. So that's something that we're gonna change. So object pose bones. I think first of all we need to access the bones itself. So data.bones gonna give you the bones, and what we're gonna be accessing is once again is a ulerting bones. So actually we need to access the pose. Rotation mode. Okay, that's actually not quite right here. Data, maybe data dot pose. Data dot pose. I'm gonna use a formula and gonna dir this guy. Data.bones. First of all, I'm gonna dir the actual armature first. So dir x will give you all these, but there's some hidden value there. So I'm gonna use text editor, text viewer. Plug this into that guy, view. It's actually pose. So object pose, and then this one, the next one is bones. And the next one should be the rotation mode. So that's how we have access the rotation mode. So here, so currently, if I select the bones, you can see they are all quaternion. once I enable this, they are all gonna be XYZ Euler, you see? So it's that's the first step. Okay, now let's do the next bit. Yeah, this part is actually slightly tricky, but you get used to it. So this is what you need. So this node object ID selector accessing the armature, and then the next one are access modes. Now it's switched to XYZ, so this is successful. The next thing we want to do is just to rotate it randomly. So because we have XYZ rotation, so we can now rotate this guy in a pose mode. So I don't know how you want to rotate it. X, I think X, Y. Does Z give you the twist or not really? No. You can actually scale it. Scale in the Z, scale in the Y. The Y actually give you this nice scaling as well if you want to animate it that way. Otherwise, you're just gonna randomly rotate this guy. Rotation Euler, okay. So for these bones, we're gonna, for rotation Euler, plug in this objects, and we're gonna give it a random value, random vector. How many bones do we have? Let's check the length. $17. Okay, 17. Plug into the count. We have 17 value. Now we just randomly rotate the bones. So that's how you do it actually. Is that rotating all the bones? Maybe yes. I think so. So you can control the scale of the bones rotations. It's kind of rotating like very erratically. Maybe that's not what you want. You want something that's smoother, so you can use vector noise. Plug in the vertices, which is the position of the bones maybe, or let's say this line. We have 17. Plug into this guy. The output is a vector, we can use it, and let's animate this guy. So that's slightly better. Let's use what we have learned so far. So we have this line vector feeding into the vector noise. In this case, we can kind of move this guy using another vector and frame. So we have something that's looking like a snake. It's still a little bit erratic because it's moving too fast. So let's do it slower. Okay, now it's a little bit more interesting. It's slower, faster. Actually, this one control the strength of the noise. Currently, it's like a purlin. So you see from the grease pencil converted into edges into the bones, and the bones just driving the skin modifier mesh. So this is the final result. You can smooth it, and you have this effect. Kind of interesting. And it's like a tentacle or worms or snakes. You can change the noise, Voronoi for example, or maybe cell noise, a little bit more erratic. Because if you have like multiple strokes, let's say you have like 100 strokes of grease pencil and you kind of want to move all these together, you can easily do that. simply using the techniques that we have learned here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Slightly tricky to dig down the bones, but this is not too bad really, because we are just driving all the bones at the same time. We don't really control the bones whatsoever. You can actually create a setup where you draw a grease pencil, and then the grease pencil is driving the IK spline, and then the IK spline driving the bones. That's a little bit more advanced. I think I will do that next probably. It's slightly different because this one we are controlling everything procedurally. So yeah, that's tricky if you are really controlling everything procedurally. But I used to be a character rigger, and rigging a characters, you basically create as simple of control as possible for the animators, and so the animators have as little control as possible to make a pose like as robust as possible for them to animate the character. So in this case, we are really the only control is just this noise and multiplier, and everything's procedural, which is not the easiest thing in the world, but still kind of interesting if you want to have this kind of animations. But some animators just maybe hate it. This kind of control is just like really weird and strange. It's totally out of control. Um in reality, you want to have a little bit of control, and this is just like something you add on top of the motion maybe. But anyway, this should be interesting to play around with. Um, anyway, that's pretty much it for this, and thanks again for tuning in. If you have any comments, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.